So now it's time for the ladies. You know, every year when I look at the list of the most powerful women, it seems this list is increasing. So today we're going to learn about how women are also influencing the family offices and their businesses. I would like to call on stage the moderator of this panel, Wendy Kraft, Chief of Staff of Fulcrum Equities SFO, joining us from the US, and she will introduce the panelists.
So I'd like to welcome everybody. I was really excited when Anthony told me I got this panel because I knew everybody on it except Celeste, who I got to meet today. And they're all fabulous, and we're going to talk a little bit about what they do, who they are. We have family members, we have people that run family offices and people that deal with families. So Sheila, I'm going to pick on you.
Sure.
For those of you that don't know you, want to tell them a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Sheila Barry Driscoll. My family is Driscoll Strawberries, and we have been in business for 115 years. And I'm also the president and the co-founder of the Billionaire Foundation.
My name is Candice Beaumont. I am CIO of L Investments. It's a single family office. And I'm also chairman of Salsano Group, another family office. L Investments, the family members, actually, we spend some time here in Dubai, as well as the families have an office here because of a joint venture we have with SBK, Sheikh Sultan bin Khalifa Al Nahyan, and as well as in Europe and the US. And then the other family is a self-made billionaire that lives in Panama, Sandro Salsano. He was supposed to be here, but his wife had some health issues and needed him to stay home, so he's not here, unfortunately. So he apologizes as well. And so that's me, and then I sit on the board of a lot of charities, and then Wendy Kraft and I have got an initiative with the Women Directors Institute, and we're both co-chairs, and we're trying to get more women on corporate boards. So we think it's very important to have women on, board roles, and we've got an active group of women who are actively working on that project together. So, we have a number of initiatives that we do together as well.
Hello everyone, I'm very happy to be here with you today in Dubai and part of this amazing exclusive gathering, and congratulations to Tony for having put that together. Thanks. My name is Vera Boissier. I'm the founder of Circle 7 Capital. It's an alliance of a group of international families through their single family offices. We value a lot the creative energy created by this difference, because every family has a different background, history, but we have common vision and, I would say, mission. It's an open system, and we are very happy to welcome also new families. My background, in fact, before creating Circle 7, I was one of the founding members of a bank-affiliated family office, which was the Pictet Bank. That was 20 years ago. We were among one of the first continental banks to create a family office department, and at the time we were also considered as having been one of the best. So it was a wonderful experience, and which inspired me a lot. I had the privilege to meet with many different families around the world who have inspired me, also their advisors. And this is why also I called my group Circle 7 Capital, because one thing I learned is that it's the financial capital, the financial wealth, the business is very important, but the families who have succeeded for over many generations have invested a lot of time and energy in growing the human, intellectual, and social capital. So that's something which I learned. Also, what I also learned, and I'm happy to share with you, was I worked in it was not really a family business, it was families in business. So the model of the Geneva private bankers, it's partnerships. And I really believe in partnership structures. I found that was really one of the secrets of their longevity, because these family banks, they have lasted for more than 200 years. And this is also something which I wanted to develop through Circle 7, is this concept of partnership, but not only with families from one culture, but from many different cultures. Also, very briefly, before I joined Pictet, I created the corporate trust department of a big Swiss bank, which was Swiss Bank Corporation. It merged with UBS. And finally, I started also my career as a lawyer, very particularly as a criminal lawyer. I had also the opportunity to work on international cases of war crime. And this first experience I had in my life influenced me a lot, because I saw, unfortunately, a lot of wealth, human destruction, and this is also something I bear in mind when working with the families, the human and behavioral risks when you deal with families. So, Celeste?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much to Anthony for having me here. It's my greatest pleasure and to be part of such a panel. I'm Celeste Turco. I'm an expert in sovereign wealth funds, and currently I'm the Vice President Corporate Strategy of a Lebanese family office. We are based in Dubai, but we are global. It's a conglomerate of companies active, in the infrastructure field at the global level. As well, we believe in partnership and in living, even if it sounds a little bit naive, but we do a daily effort to make an impact. Directly with our business, infrastructure is an interesting field, but as well with our philanthropic activity. We have a foundation, and actually we are moving from pure philanthropy into impact investments, as we were discussing before. A little bit about my background. It's very interesting how moving from the Italian government, where I was mainly working on sovereign wealth fund, and I still advise some of the sovereign wealth funds, into a private family office, I discovered how many similarities there were. And first of all is the long-term horizon, is the value proposition, is the idea that there's not only one bottom line, but there's a double or triple bottom line. And actually, my task nowadays is exactly to look at the triple bottom line and to move the group that has based his establishment into an innovative solution for infrastructure to look at an innovative way to do business. So I think one of the panel, and with this I close this brief introduction, was thinking how a family office are keen on in investing in innovative sectors. But what we are doing now actually is how we can innovate the way we do what we do. And I think this is a slightly different way to see innovation.
Thank you, ladies. So Sheila, I'm going to pick on you for a minute,
Of
because
course.
we know each other
Yes,
rather
we
well. So I feel like I can do that. So you're a family member, proud history of the family. What moved you to start the fund?
So actually, is Anwar Viswar here? Could you stand for just a second? This gentleman was my inspiration, and I'll tell you how that happened. I was going to create the foundation, and I was at 6s and 9s with myself. I called Anwar, and he gave me his blessing and his advice, and he guided me in the right direction. And there's a very important part of the Bhagavad Gita that says, perform actions without fruit of actions. And he did so, and to this day, he has never asked me for anything. But because of this man's generosity and wisdom, the Billionaire Foundation was founded. We have over 138 billionaires that have been able to bless and prosper everyone around the world. And again, one thing that my great-grandfather said was, knowledge is learned, wisdom is remembered. So thank you, Anwar.
Candice. And it's not fair because I love Candice and I've done her for many years, but I think it's fascinating. You're from Australia. You work for a family office that's in Dubai and New York, and you live in various places in the United States. You have a lot of influence, and when I started in the family office space, you were one of the first people I met. And to me, it was just amazing because you were all over the globe, talking to people. I've seen you give up your lunch just to help somebody out. I don't think any of us up here set out to be an influencer. I think it happened. It just kind of occurred. So what motivates you to always want to help people and to reach out and give that time, give up your lunch hour to help somebody out? Because I've seen you do it 100 times.
Look, I think it comes back to that side comes back to family and role models. So, both of my parents were always very giving of their time, and my mom always said, look, whenever you can help someone, no matter what it is, or you'll see, even if you don't like the person, help them anyway, because you'll see good things will come back to you out of nowhere, because it's the law of the universe. When you help other people, God helps you back. So my mom always had that ethic and always just helped everyone, gave to everyone, helped people financially, helped them with things they were doing with their family. And then my dad was also very philanthropic and, established hospitals in Miramar and did a lot of things, and ultimately was honoured by the Queen of England with the Order of Australia, which is, if anyone's English or Australian or Canadian, they are familiar with what that is. So it's, a very unique honour. So, my dad was kind of recognised for what he was doing, helping people. My mom did it in a quieter way. So I think it's just like an ethic I was raised with, and I think, in families and family offices, you always want to encourage, your kids to have the right values and to help people, and I think people learn by their role models. So I was just lucky that I had good role models. So
I'm going to pick on you just a little bit, because what you might not know about Candice is she's also a young global leader out of Davos. So I think that's really neat. So behind the scenes, you really are doing quite a bit of influencing. I think it's fascinating. Vera, so people in our age group and older don't remember what it was like 20 years ago when banks didn't have a family office department. There were no conferences, I promise you. There were not one family office conference 30 years ago. Families quietly knew each other. There was no way to get together. You went into a bank and they treated you like anybody else, even though you had more complex systems. So how did you come to be a part of setting up the first family office department of a private bank?
Yes, it's very funny what you're mentioning. So I remember that was 20 years ago. The partners of the bank, they were very impressed how the family office concept developed in the United States with all the historical families, the Rockefeller, the Mellon, etc. And they wanted to import it in Europe. And they considered that, in fact, the family office tradition itself came originally from Europe, from the old banking family, but somehow was lost in translation, and that in the United States it developed. So the partners of Pictet have been studying this concept of family office, and then they say, okay, we would love to implement that. And I remember very well, I said to them, yeah, this name, family office, is amazing, and we should protect it. So I just started in the bank, I was quite young, and I say, let's protect the name Pictet and family office, because that's going to make a buzz. And in fact, it was absolutely useless, because it was something which fall in the public domain, but it showed that we were the first bank in the continental Europe to create that. And 1 month later, Julius Baer appeared and say, yeah, we have also created a family office. And the first conference as where I took part was just explaining what does that concept mean. So it's incredible how in 20 years it took off. And I remember very well that at the time there was no single family office, nor multi-family offices. So it was really something which was growing. So the way this community has grown is incredible, and how it's spread around the world as well. And it's still evolving, growing, and that's, I think that's very fascinating. I'm really happy to be still part of this endeavor.
So Celeste, we were talking earlier, you came from Italy, you moved to this region, and really have brought some changes to the family that you're working for. Do you want to talk, can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure, it would be my pleasure, and thank you for the question. Actually, what I learned the most is that working with sovereign funds that have asset under management up to $1 trillion, you make an impact by default. But working for a family with a slightly smaller amount of asset under management, you can make an impact and a change in two ways. Directly investing, impact investment, or the way you invest, but also internally. And for me, being, I would say, a European woman in a Lebanese family office, in this part of the world for 7 years, it was very interesting how I didn't have to do anything actually special. I just had to be myself. The value of the family were my value. So it was very easy for me to be an ambassador, not only of our business, but also of our foundation and of the family values, as it should be in a family office. And so on one side it was very easy because I had commonalities in the purpose and the mission and the values. And as well, I really learned how doing things the right way, your way, even if sometimes it's just a different way, because you come from a different background, can be the engine of the change. And for me, it was a big learning, because I thought I need always to prove my capabilities, especially being a woman, this part of the world. I always need to come with some innovative ideas. I need to really show an additional value in what I'm doing and why I'm here. And actually, I realized that basically just being here and doing things in the right way was an innovative presence. And I'm very grateful to the family, because they welcomed me as a member of the family, and they saw the value of having somebody with a completely different background, nationality, culture, or religion within the family. So I'm grateful to them, and as well I think that it's itself a great example how partnership differences together actually can already represent an addition and value.
So I'm going to ask you guys a question that's not on the agenda. Mostly because I know you all very well. Most of you have a lot of connections. And I've heard people say, oh, well, they know everybody, and that's not really true. I think, what I've seen from all of you is that those aren't just business cards. I mean, you truly care, and you really get to know each other. And has that led you in a certain direction in your life? Has that led you to have a certain influence for good, for the space? Because I think it has. I've seen all of you take those networks and take that influence and help try to change some things. You want to touch on that in any order that you like?
Thank you. That's a great question. For me, it's very important the people with whom I align, and they have to be in alignment with my values. And I think one of the most important phrases that I've heard recently is, I don't want to change the world, I want to improve it. And that resonates with me, because somebody said we could change the world, but many people have changed it for the wrong reasons. So if we improve it, we leave it a little bit better than we found it. And I like to work with people that play well with each other. We've all been in situations where we've had vying factors, even within the families, and it just, at the end of the day, it doesn't work. So if you really get together with people who want to create change, do good things, I've often said, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And with that, that's where you can start to make the changes and do good things. And so that's what I've done. We can all go through the Rolodexes and we can all look through our LinkedIn. But one of the most important pieces that I look at, Wendy, is, are these people in alignment with my values? Do they share my vision of doing good and actually improving the world? And do you serve the higher good? Are you leaving the world a little bit better? And with that, you'll attract what you want, in a sense, but you'll definitely attract who you are.
Very well said.
I agree with Sheila. I think, look, the World Economic Forum mission is improving the state of the world. So I think whenever you can, it's good to try to improve the state of the world and make it better in whatever fashion you can, whether that be through taking plastic out of the ocean or gender parity, which Wendy and I have been working on with the Women Directors Institute, trying to get more women on corporate boards.
Well, I have to tell you how that came about, because the office that Candice is the CIO for is oil and gas families. They're here in Dubai a lot. And I still remember when you came back and you said, it's really funny. In Dubai, they have women on boards. In the United States, we don't. Don't you think that's wrong? And I said, yeah, you know, but I never thought about being on a board. I have a home, I have children, I'm working, I'm busy. It just didn't even come up to me till you mentioned it. And how great it was here in Dubai that they had made the effort to do that. And so that was something that we try to use our influence to do there, because it's a good idea. Why not?
Exactly, and yeah, I guess the UAE government was very at the forefront of the initiative, because they had an announcement, I think a couple of years ago, that they would try to have a woman on every corporate board, or every government board, sorry. And so that was very much a step in the right direction that other countries haven't taken necessarily yet. So, we both think it's very important, and if anyone wants to help with that initiative, we're happy to collaborate as well. And then, outside of that, I think, look, obviously the World Economic Forum gives people a great opportunity to collaborate. So I've just been very lucky, because so many of my peers and, other young leaders in that circle are doing so many great things, like, Vickers Potter, who spoke here last year, who's running Sunny Varkey's Foundation, and they give every teacher in the world $1 million every year, really, because they want to help education, and they want to help to encourage people to go into the field of education and help teachers. So I've been fortunate to be affiliated there and on the academy and help pick the winning teacher every year. So there's so many different initiatives that so many of my colleagues and friends have, and you can contribute any way you can. And I think it's really satisfying to get involved in some of their initiatives, whether it be philanthropically. I admire Mike Milken. I always try to give, money to all his efforts and help him. He's doing so many great things for the world, solving prostate cancer, and he's got so many different medical initiatives. And I think whenever you can, get involved with someone like that and help their initiative, it just enriches your life too. And then, look, I mean, obviously, I deal on a high level. I talk to kings and princes and leaders of the world. But I think it's also very important to remember that, kind of what I said before, I'm very fortunate in that if I wasn't born into the situation with good parents, I might not have gotten the right education. I might not have been the right spot. So whenever I walk down the street, Mother Teresa said, an act of kindness can change the world. And a lot of my friends that grew up in New York, they look at the homeless people and they say, no, they're on drugs, they've done something wrong, they belong there, just the system's got to clean them up, don't give them anything, you're going to encourage them, you're going to make them worse. And I'm like, no, Mother Teresa said an act of kindness changes the world. So I walk around, I always try to have change. I have about, 30 $1 bills in my wallet, because I don't know how many homeless people I'm going to see when I walk on the way to the office. And every single homeless person I see, each person I give $1. And I try to treat them respectfully and be nice to them. And literally my mom came to New York and I said, oh, Mom, you've got to meet this homeless girl. I've become good friends with her. She's only 19, she's from Boston. So I literally was introducing my mom to the homeless girl. And then, in New York, because some of them are regulars and I get to know them so well. And, I try to give them advice, and some of them are smart. They've just had bad situations, bad parents. They're college graduates, they dropped out because they were being abused at home. And they just need, someone to give them good advice and point them on the right direction. So I think, you can't judge people who maybe are not in the same situation as you or don't have the privilege you have. Everyone you meet, whether it be someone of influence or it be a homeless person on the street who really can't give you anything back in return right now, I think it's important to show kindness to everyone, kind of like Cinderella, wherever you go.
Vera, Celeste?
Yeah, thank you very much. So you mentioned the network. Yes, absolutely, it's key. I read recently a book which says that the network always wins. The challenge is when you have a very global and international network is to build a community where we can really work together. And that's really my challenge today, is through this Circle 7 community, is to concretely work on projects. aligned families. There are a lot of families around the globe who have similar aspirations, but to make it happen, you have to really manage, work on the relationships, build proximity and connectivity, and that takes a lot of time with families, depending on the structure of governance, depending on the place they are based. So I think that an event like this one is amazing because we meet regularly families, so you need to see them very frequently. And this is, I think this it's just great to be here and to share this moment with you.
Well, at the company level, I would say that we consider the power of network in terms of learning best practices, sharing, and spread into network, both at the business level and at the foundation level. Actually, recently, we were very impressed by one of the initiatives of His Royal Highness Prince Ali in Jordan with the refugee. It was a sports initiative. And we work with our foundation in Lebanon in support to refugees, but we mainly provide healthcare services, and then we do other many things. But then we said, well, that's a great initiative, and we saw some of the impact numbers. So why can't we think about it, how we can develop the same initiative in Lebanon? This is a very small example, but we do this on a daily basis. We see which are the best practices, both in terms of pure business or impact investing in philanthropic activity. And we learn, and we try as well to put in our network, to find partner, like-minded partner. So I think that the moment where the network is based on people who can share your values, and which is your aim, it becomes really powerful. At the personal level, it's slightly different in the sense that I hadn't realized I was a potential influencer till the moment I've been interviewed by Be Influence. It's a small website. And I realized actually that my story itself was very peculiar. Coming from the Italian government in Dubai, working for Levine's family office, being an expert in strategy, with my PhD in political theory. So itself was something out of the boxes. And actually looking at the new trends of the future, where very rarely you will be studying as a young student what you're going to be in your life, apart from the fact that maybe you want to continue the business or your family, or even you have a family business but you want to do something different, going into fintech and others. I thought that it would be a perfect duty as well to give back to the future generation who actually are the ones who's going to shape the future, our experience. And that could be a very valuable tool. So for me, it was a discovery. And actually, I implemented at a personal level, teaching at the university and mentoring young Emirati women. And for me, it was a great opportunity to influence their idea about the future and giving a little bit of my own experience that is extraordinary itself, but to them. And just a very small example, one of my prominent students wanted to work in a company, in a corporate, and I saw in her a potential future ambassador for the UAE or a member of the mission at the United Nations in New York, and she changed radically. So even in a small size, I think we can, as a women mainly, but as a professional itself, influence the young generation. And I'm a firmly believer that that's what we need to do besides giving back to the community, but really the young generation for me are those that can make the change and the impact.
So I'm going to kind of follow up on that thought process a little bit. And I think, I've been in the space a while, all of us have been, and there are things about the family office space that we like and some things we don't. And if I'm always humbled when somebody actually says you have some influence. I'm like, you got to be kidding. But I don't do it for that. I do it because I really enjoy helping families and the family that I work for. But if you could use your influence to change something in the family office space, as Sheila said, for good, what would that be? I'll give you a hint. I firmly believe we need some minimum educational standards for family office executives. And we don't have that. We don't have accounting schools for family office. We don't have law school for family office. Those industries have a base minimum education, and we don't here. We learn it by who we know, who we worked for, and everything else, which is very ad hoc for our space and can lead to some problems. So if there's one thing I could do with the rest of my career, it would be help to establish a school or a minimum standard for executives to come out of to go work in family offices. That's one of my pet peeves. Vera?
Yeah, if I may start. For me, what would be very important is that, again, when we speak about family offices, we speak a lot about technical skills, about finance, about law, about tax. But what is missing, and you have some very interesting conference, you have some classes, but all which is related to, I would say, behavioral, family, education, this is for me very, very, very key, because from my experience, I have really seen in my career billionaire families who have just destroyed themselves, destroyed employment, destroyed businesses, and sometimes the difference is very tiny. And should they have had the good advisors of having, if they would have dedicated a bit of more of their time in understanding the psychology side, this would have an immense effect. So I am really a strong believer that all this behavioral skills, psychology, and this has to be absolutely developed. Now, coming about regulation, it is true that there are many countries where the family office industry is not regulated. Even in Switzerland, in 2021, we will have more rules and standards levels. I think this is great, but again, for me, it's the content and the human side which has to be really developed. So,
Anybody else on how you would use your influence to change our space?
Well, from my side, obviously, because of my position, I think that institutionalization of the family office would be beneficial for the family itself, and I would say much more for the future generation. Not only in terms of having a constitution, being very sure it's going to be the governance for the future generation, but I think that if it's very solid structure in place, and I think that's the new trend of this part of the world. Is different for family office, maybe in Europe where they have a longer history, or in US, but I see the trend in the GCC family office towards higher sophistication, internationalization, both in terms of governance as well as pure asset allocation. But I think that it was an important point. This should be based on education and on, I would say, you need to have also very high cultural awareness or sociological awareness, because that should be really not impacting or affecting the overall running of the business now and for the future generation. And I think there's still some room for improvement in terms of having a very institutionalized structure that also define role and responsibility. That's very difficult, because in a family office, as long as it's not becoming global, we are global, we are much more as a corporation, a multi-corporation, than a real single family office. So it's easier, but for others, it's very difficult to have a very clear understanding of role responsibilities. So on one side, flexibility is very highly appreciated, but on the other side, on the long term, can be affecting the business.
Sheila, Candice?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm thinking, you said something very important in the beginning. You said 20 years ago, these kind of conferences didn't exist, and that's absolutely true. And I think every one of our families with a certain amount of wealth have always worked in isolation, and you kind of hammer it out and you beat each other up with it. And I think, to your point, creating forums where a part of what we do at the Billionaire Foundation is share best practices. And we come together with people that have been experts in the field, done it already, so people don't continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. But you do have to create that forum, you do have to create that safe atmosphere to say, I don't know, I need help, this isn't working. And that would probably be the conundrum we all have to solve. But if it could be solved, education being the component, now we're on to something. And if we can let our guard down, share best practices, see what works and what doesn't, and then come together and work together more effectively, now I think we're off to a good start.
Well said. Candice?
Yeah, I guess Sheila's coming back to your point, which is that, you know, there's not really a valuable education for families. So I think your initiative to educate families is obviously, and to educate family office professionals and, you know, have kind of certification. I think it's, you know, a great initiative in the industry and something that is needed and very relevant. And then I think, look, the next gen education, you know, really getting the next gens to be able to lead. And look, I think there are people out there, I think, you know, look, Justin Rockefeller, who's here, is doing great things with the impact, trying to get families to sign the impact and have a positive impact. So I think there's a lot of people out there already doing great things that are trying to get the next gens to, you know, and other families to use their capital to have a positive impact in the world. And I think that's, you know, obviously if you can influence, that's one of the greatest influences you can have, is to have a collective influence.
I'm going to ask one last question because Candice threatened me with my life if I didn't get her to lunch on time. Between all of you, it's a financial powerhouse. And I'm not just talking in terms of wealth, I'm talking in terms of knowledge. All of you are involved in investing. It's a very weird year. Geopolitically, it's a weird year. In the US, from a tax perspective, it's a really weird year. And I'll put a disclaimer out there, you can't sue them if they're wrong. 2019, what sector would you invest in? Sheila?
I would definitely invest in IA. That, and I have invested. And also an area that I'm exploring is AI in combination with entertainment. And this is a new upcoming field. So gentlemen who are in the world of AI, think of how this could spill into the world of entertainment. How could you select better films, better scripts, better content? Because if we're going to catapult forward and use the media in a positive way, AI could very, very well complement that. And as you said, crunch the data, crunch the number, and give back information to others around the world that could create a better, more positive content than what we're seeing now in the film world, television world, and even on Broadway.
You're bored with Marvel?
Yes!
Candice?
Yeah, look, I think there's lots of different, I agree with Sheila, artificial intelligence, technology, cybersecurity, and I think, look, I'm on Stephen Kennedy Smith's board for his efforts in biotech to, you know, there's so many new initiatives in healthcare, and I think we're going to see so many great things coming out in the health space. And, you know, these companies trade at great multiples, and you get in early in the right one, you can do really well, as, you know, I've seen Stephen do by being on his board. So I think healthcare is interesting, but personally, you know, the office that I'm chairman of, we think we're at the peak of the market. So we're actually going back to cash. So, you know, you can get 300 basis points plus now in cash accounts. So we're kind of converting, we're converting back to cash, and we're waiting, and we think that you're going to have a downward spiral where you can buy things for, you know, 4 times EBITDA again in the next few years. So we want to have the liquidity to be able to play when that cycle turns in.
Vera?
Yeah, to answer a question, we are a very long-term investor, and like Hadi said, we'll have to invest and encourage families to co-invest, and of course influenced by the external world, but also by topics where we think that the next generation will be interested. So yeah, there are many topics, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, but what we're trying to find is the areas where the future generation, what is going to really be their path and passion. So that's how we are going to invest.
Celeste?
Well, my answer is by default infrastructure, as you are infrastructure. So let me provide a different answer. Actually, two fields. One is for sure AI, and I think it's not only AI itself, but if you look at blockchain, the application of blockchain to other sectors, and that's something that we look opportunistically out of our scope. And the third things I think that I mentioned a little bit early, impact investment. So I think that on the long term, sustainability will become, will be understood as profitability. Could be in terms of reputation, could be poor financial return, and other. And we are a long-term investor, obviously, and infrastructure, I think, it's one of the fields that can shows how sustainability on the long term can be translated into financial return, not only, or impact return, or triple bottom line return.
Thank you all so very much. That was fascinating.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.